Today on Truth Be Told, we're pulling back the curtain on the high-stakes world of sports betting. I'm joined by veteran journalist Patrick Everson, who spent years building insider sources, tracking betting trends, and translating the numbers into stories that fans can actually use. From the way he earns trust of sources to the way he helps the public understanding what's really driving the lines, this conversation is about so much more than sports. It's about strategy, communication, and truth. Make sure to give us a rating on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening, and check us out at truthbetoldpodcast.com. Let's dive into the conversation.
This is the Truth Be Told podcast, where we unlock the secrets of strategic communication.
My guest today is Patrick Everson, a senior reporter for Vegas Insider. Based in Las Vegas since 1994, he has worked in the sports betting, journalism, and content space for well over a decade. He's most known for his deep roster of contacts behind sportsbook counters and sharp bettors, providing readers and viewers with the ins and outs of how events are being bet. He's also a contributor to Fox Sports' digital sports betting coverage. In addition, Patrick is a thought leader in the sports betting space, often appearing on or moderating panels at national conferences. He's a great journalist and an even better person. As we get into the conversation, feel free to follow Patrick on X at PatrickE_Vegas. Let's get right into the conversation. Welcome to this episode of the Truth Be Told podcast. I'm with my good friend, Patrick Everson, betting insider, communication expert, journalist of all sorts. How are you doing today, Patrick?
I am doing great. It's an honor to be on Truth Be Told. This is pretty cool. You and I have talked a little bit about all the different types of people you have on this podcast, and I'm just like, man, I don't stack up to those people, but
yeah,
let's see over
Patrick,
the next hour. Maybe I do.
You've got a face for podcast audio, though, you know? Patrick's been just a great friend in the industry that kind of met in a weird way in your home, Vegas, about almost now a decade ago, which is kind of crazy. But I know listeners just learned a little bit about you from your journalism experience to what you're doing day to day now. And I know what you have to offer is just really interesting, especially with the start of the NFL season right upon us. Well, I got to ask you a question first before we get into anything else. Who is your pick to win the Super Bowl this year? And why is it the Buffalo Bills?
And why is it okay, truth be told, I would like to see, I mean, short of, as you can see behind me, I guess
we got Broncos helmet behind.
We're just doing audio on the podcast, right?
Well, they'll see you. They're going to see your beautiful
well, fantastic. And they will see that I don't have a face just for audio.
Yeah.
Or maybe I do. That's their call. Obviously, I'm a Denver Broncos fan. They're my ride or die, just like your Buffalo Bills. Now, that said, I don't think the Broncos are either getting to or winning the Super Bowl this year. I would like to see Josh Allen win a title. I like Josh Allen a lot. I think he just seems, not only is a fantastic player, he just seems like an upstanding person. And that's why I think he connects the way he does with a lot of fans. And I'm sure that's why he connects with the fan base in Buffalo so well. So look, they're right there among the favorites. They've got to open at home against the Ravens. They're going to get a test right away, which will tell us a lot about where that team's headspace is. So I would love to see Josh Allen do it. I think they will. I have, a couple of sources who are kind of keen on my Broncos actually winning the AFC West. Well, for that to happen, obviously Kansas City's got to struggle a little bit, and Denver's got to step up into that struggle too. It's got to be a two-way street. I mean, if KC struggles and still wins 11 games, they're probably gonna win the division. So I like Buffalo. I do think one thing that was pointed out with one of my sources at one of my national sources at BetMGM, and I thought he made an interesting point over the summer, Dave, and that is that the San Francisco 49ers aren't taking a whole lot of bets, and they have a very advantageous schedule. So that might be a team to watch out for. You're getting a little better number on the Niners than perhaps you should. Now, look, they had injuries last year. They don't have Deebo Samuel back. You never know exactly how that's all going to shake out. They're still not going to have Brandon Ayuk for several weeks. Right. So hard to say, but that was one that, when they say that, that kind of information catches my ear, and I'm like, and at the time, I'm not sure exactly what they are now, but at the time they were like 20-1, and they have an advantageous schedule, and if they win the division, anything could happen.
Right. And I think they finally paid their quarterback too.
Which would be a nice thing to do,
Yeah. Well, it's kind of crazy. First of all, if the Chiefs do struggle this year, I think America wins. I mean, we're over. I know I got Chiefs listeners and Swifties that are listening, and that's
Yeah.
fine, but we've had enough. We've had enough Kansas City, I think. But even in your answer there, so for people wondering, how do you have all this information? You're just what I think is an expert communicator in a few different ways. Is one, you have to develop and maintain these sources, as you referenced, across sports books, across different media outlets, and do it in a way where you're maintaining that relationship for years, if not decades. And then secondly is how you communicate all these kind of things to the public that may be your average, like me, your average Joe idiot gambler that's trying to figure out what the heck to do. But can you just walk us through maybe what, in your current world, what does your day-to-day look like? And I know that's probably going to change. Week 1 starts soon here, but what's your day-to-day look like?
Well, it's almost there now because I do a weekly report. I do one on college and one on NFL. It's really my main piece of work throughout the season. And for the NFL, it's a long article, goes up a Vegas Insider. It's got all 16 games. And from week to week, it generally posts on Sunday night as that week's games are ending. And it's an odds report on the next week's games, on the upcoming week's games. Now that you're through Sunday night, there's only one game left during the week. Monday night, maybe 2, because there is a doubleheader or 2, I think, this year for Monday night. But in this instance where we have this gap before NFL Week 1 starts, because you only have 3 preseason games, I got that article up sooner. But again, it's a 16 game report, literally some info and insights on every single game. And it'll go up, like I said, generally the Sunday before the next week's games. And then it updates all week long. Every game gets 2 to 3 updates throughout the week. So you can kind of see this progression of how the line is moving, where the action's coming in, how the needs and liability might shift, how injuries or weather might be impacting a number, and how people are betting and so forth. So, and I do a similar thing for college football, though not nearly as detailed. I usually just take like 6 key college football games, and it's the same thing. It's just a much smaller report. So that's the thing that keeps me, that's basically kicks off my week on Sunday night. Monday, I come back, as I said, I do a college one too. So I come back with that one on Monday, dating those articles all week long, constantly talking to people behind the sportsbook counters at multiple sportsbooks, because I don't want to pigeonhole this all to, say, BetMGM or DraftKings or Caesars or whomever. I want my readers to get a better idea of how this is evolving everywhere. So one day it might be, to open each week, I tend to go with the Superbook, because they give me really great access, and they have really good odds makers and risk managers who give me great comments. So I start with them, but then I might go to DK. I might go to Borgata Sportsbook in Atlantic City, which is a BetMGM property where I've got a great source. I'll go to BetMGM nationally, as I discussed a little bit earlier. They've got a couple of people there who give me really good comments. Locally here in Vegas, I might hit this. I've already mentioned the Superbook. I might hit South Point, which is a really respected sports book. There's a book that operates in Ohio, New Jersey, Kentucky now, and maybe even Tennessee, called Prime Sportsbook. It's not a massive sports book. It's not a DK or a FanDuel, but they take a very specific type of player. They tend to book toward more sharp action, and that gives the average Joe and Jane public, people like me and you, who generally bet recreationally. We're trying to win, but we're not doing out.
Right. You're winning your Chili's money.
Yeah, we're just trying to win some #Chili's money. So right. I want those people to get a feel for how it's being bet at, say, a Prime Sportsbook or like a Circa Sportsbook here in Las Vegas. Circa also operates in a few states, and in fact just opened in Kentucky. So if you got any Kentucky listeners, I cannot recommend highly enough. Get yourself the Circa app. You're going to appreciate it if you're, no matter what sports you're betting on. They price very competitively, and so does Prime. So that just gives my audience a perspective of how games are evolving and how teams are being bet and where action is and so forth at the big major books that everybody knows, the DraftKings and FanDuels and Caesars and BetMGMs of the world and so forth, but also a little bit of a different mindset on how things are being bet elsewhere. And oftentimes those actually end up aligning, but sometimes there's some differences, and they're pretty intriguing differences that might make an impact on where you decide to spend your money, or even if you decide to spend your money. Dave, I feel like the work I do, I'm not trying to tell anybody to do anything. I'm not trying to say, hey, you should bet this or bet that or whatever. I'm just trying to tell them how the odds are evolving, how games are being bet, and then let the reader or viewer or social media consumer decide what that means to them. And if it means I get you off a bet that you were going to make because you recognize that the value that was once there to make that bet is now gone, then I think that's at least as valuable, and maybe even more so, than information I give that might lead you to bet what you were hoping to bet anyway.
I think it's fascinating. And you're always sharing great information. I know we've got your Twitter handle here, but Patrick E_Vegas, and we'll link that in the show notes. But Patrick's always got great tips and some of this information. What people may not realize that aren't in this gambling world yet is how different some of the lines, the odds essentially could be from one casino to the next, and how much they're maybe competing with each other and trying to get people to spend money at their book versus somebody else's. But when you just listed, I don't know, a dozen different sources, maybe, plus the articles you're writing, plus everything your time is kind of crazy. So what does a conversation look like midweek, maybe towards the end of the week? So we're a day or two before kickoff, and you're picking up the phone or you're meeting somebody from a sports book. What does that conversation look like?
That conversation looks like, and let's just, since we've got the NFL season starting, we're just going to make this very NFL centric, but you could apply this to other areas. But I think it's, and honestly, look, NFL is the elephant in the living room of American sports betting. Is the number one driver of American sports betting. So it's good timing to do this, and it's worth that being the prime example, even if it were April, because that's just how much the NFL dominates American sports betting. But let's say Wednesday, Thursday, we're heading to the Thursday night game. We got, the Cowboys at the Eagles, for instance, in week 1. The conversation would be along the lines of, first off, we'd be looking at 3, 4, maybe 5 games, try to pick out 4 or 5 games that are going to have some national intrigue. They don't all have to be like the primetime games or what have you. But look, let's be honest. We want to report more in depth on the games that most people are actually watching. Ravens Bills, obviously.
Right.
That is just a massive, massive Sunday night game. So that's going to be one of those. But midweek, the conversation will be along the lines of, okay, where did you open? Where are you sitting now? Did you see any of the sharper, which would be professional bettors, the people who do this for a living, who, are all about the analytics and running simulations and all these things that they do to try to scratch out, and I mean literally scratch out a living as a sports bettor. It's not something I would recommend doing unless you are really, really dialed in. It just takes an incredible amount of effort, and I thank God that I don't try to do that. But I respect those who do. Did any sharp play come in early in the week to help? Did they try to take advantage of that opening number? Did they feel like there was something there? And if so, did that? How did the sportsbook react to that sharp money? Did you move? Did you go up? Did you go down on the number? And then, as you're getting closer to game day each time, you say, okay, game day is where like 90%, maybe even sometimes more, of all money on any given day comes in. On any given game, I should say. The overwhelming majority of money comes in on game day. The majority of that comes in closer to kickoff, Dave. So even if I'm talking to somebody on Wednesday, their position on that Cowboys-Eagles opener might change by Thursday morning, might change again by Thursday late afternoon, early evening before you get to kickoff. But so what I'll do to kind of address that, if I'm publishing something earlier than that, where do you think this is going? Or for example, if I'm talking to somebody Wednesday, Thursday, and I want an update on that Ravens-Bills game, which is still 3 or 4 days out. Where do you think this is going? Where do you think the public's going to come in? Where do you think your liability is going to be? Where do you think your need is going to be? How is this going to evolve over the next few days based on the experience you have? You've seen this. You've booked thousands and thousands of games for years and years and years. How this tends to go in the final days and more so in the final hours. Where do you expect to end up on this? So that's kind of the midweek conversation.
So I'm curious the behind the scenes, I guess, communication operations at the sports books. So when you talk about maybe a sharp, and you've reported on not the people, but somebody coming in spending a heck of a lot of money on one game. So if
Hmm.
they think the Bills are going to win by 3.5 points and they put a hefty wager on 3.5, then that casino might move it up to 4.5 to try to offset the opposition, I guess, or incentivize people to bet on the other side.
Hmm.
But I'm wondering, behind the scenes, do sports books have more than just math, more than just analytics? Do they have somebody that's looking at the injuries and the weather and all these kind of things that are going to impact the game? Or are they just purely looking at what is the betting trend, and then let's mathematically make sure that we have no liability?
Well, that's a really good question. This is going to, first off, they're all going to be looking at injuries and weather and so forth. They've got to stay in tune to that. Even if maybe the betting patterns haven't caught up to that yet, but pretty much in this day and age, information is so instant that betting patterns do tend to catch up to that. So they're going to have their odds makers are going to be tuned into those elements for sure. But to further answer that question, it varies a little bit. They're all going to look at injuries and weather and so forth. But beyond that, how games are being bet and so forth, it varies. Each of these sports books, some of them have very similar operating models. Some of them have very different operating models. So I was mentioning a little bit earlier, some of the books that tend to see sharper action, welcome sharper action, try to set numbers that maybe compete a little better with the market. Places like Circa and the Superbook here in Las Vegas, South Point here in Las Vegas for sure. And I know these are foreign names to most people, but if you come out here, you should definitely check them out. It's a little bit different style than what you're going to get from DraftKings and FanDuel, who are booking more toward a very broad public audience and trying to entice their customers into different types of bets than perhaps some of these other operators that have a different model operate under. So it's going to depend a little bit on a sportsbook's operating model, on how they respond to this. But I will say this. You mentioned somebody puts a whole lot of money on one team. A lot of times these big bets that I report on, and I report on six-figure bets pretty regularly, and as we get to Super Bowl and so forth, every now and then when a game has a whole lot of liquidity and really has the whole nation's attention, and you've only got one game, so it's where everybody is, you'll see a ton of six-figure, mid-six-figure, and even seven-figure wagers. Those often come from high roller VIP type customers. They are not necessarily sharp professional bettors. Now, that's not to say some of them aren't. Some may be, and some may be ones who maybe aren't considered sharp professionals, but at least do some homework. But for the most part, these are just high roller VIPs who want to have some skin in the game, and they're not the Rufus Peabodys or the Spankies of the world. And those are just a couple of names I dropped that are respected professional bettors who do a lot of hard work to to hone their craft. So, but and the reason I bring that up is you could have a sports book, say, let's just say on a regular season game, they might take, a $50,000 play from a high roller VIP type on a certain team, on a certain spread or what have you, and they might not move at all. They might take a $2,000 bet from somebody they respect, who they know is a sharp bettor, and the juice might move a little bit. That minus 110 might go to minus 120 or something, or the number might go from 3 to 3.5, or from 3 to 2.5 the other way, depending on which way they're going with it. It's not unusual for a bet of a lot less money from somebody that's well respected as a bettor to move the needle more so than a huge bet from a VIP high roller who's just that, a VIP high roller, not a professional bettor necessarily. Betting a lot more money might not move the needle at all, or may move the needle significantly less than you'd expect for the amount of money they play.
That's really interesting. Just have plenty of cash to throw at something.
And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people like that, but these are, literally just high roller types who roll into the casino for a weekend. They're playing tables, they're playing sports, they're eating and drinking a lot. They're probably going to, expensive shit. You're here in Vegas, you're going to shows and so forth. They're the bread and butter of the of most American sports books. They need that consumer really badly because they're not,
Right.
they, they enjoy it. They can afford to lose. And to be honest, they tend to lose. Some of them are going to win, but over time, they're not going to win.
Right.
And that's something that is kind of key to a sports book's ability to turn a profit and run a good business. So they're very key consumers. And even the sharp bettors admit that. They're like, look, the VIP high rollers who put out these huge bets, a lot of people kind of turn their noses up at them because they're not studying. They're just kind of throwing a lot of money somewhere. But even I've had very smart people in the industry say, look, these people can be the lifeblood of American sports books, and they need those bettors.
What is it? So let's say you're talking to one of your sources and maybe a large bet was made or they're seeing trends or whatever. How do you differentiate from what you can share fully transparently to what you can share but kind of conceal maybe the source to what you just can't share at all, but they're just letting you know so you have inside
Right.
knowledge?
Well, often, first off, you do get kind of, I've been in journalism for, 34 years, newspapers for 25 of those years, and 22 of those years at Las Vegas, at the Review Journal here in Las Vegas. So, and most of that time was in sports. And honestly, I will say, I should add this, the last 3 years of my time at the Review Journal, I left the sports desk and was the editorial writer. And you get a lot of really good perspective when you're writing a lot on politics and policy and issues and so forth. And that helps inform you too. It gives you it helps that innate sense of, okay, I know they told me this, but I need to this needs to be on background. This needs to be something that informs what I write, what I put out on video, what I post on social media, but I can't be too direct about it. Can't really, you get used to that. But also part of having that innate sense is having the relationships with these sources that I've cultivated for, a decade or more in the sports betting space, and sometimes even longer than that, because I've been in the Las Vegas journalism space for, 3 decades now, 31 years. When you have that relationship built up over that long, and sometimes they'll even say things and you'll know where you'd be like, hey, you don't want me to publish that, right? Yes, I don't want you to publish that. And you have to be, and that's not to, deny truth or anything like that. You have to have an understanding with your sources, the relationship with your sources, to recognize those things. If they forgot to say before they said something, okay, this is off the record. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, I know this is off the record, right? Yes, this is off the record. And then usually what we can do, if I want to kind of weasel it to being on the record, Dave, is we massage the message a little bit. I've had a great source here for about 10 years, an excellent source, who unfortunately is moving on this season just due to the kind of the volatility that exists in the sports betting space. Fantastic source, and oftentimes gives me really good information that if I put it out exactly as is, it'll point right to this, so I can't put it out that way. However, if we massage the message and we make it a little more generic, like we say, a Las Vegas bookmaker said, we saw this, or this, and it's going to lead to this outcome, or we got destroyed by this outcome because we saw this. And if I just make it as casual, as generic, if you will, as a Las Vegas bookmaker, well, a Las Vegas bookmaker could describe any of 10 to 15 people I deal with on a weekly basis. So it doesn't necessarily point to one sports book or another. It doesn't identify. The bigger thing is, and then one of the reasons that we sometimes have to pull the throttle back on this, Dave, is sometimes it's information that not only would identify the person who gave it out and the book where it was made, but the bettor who made it. So,
Right.
And some bettors don't want that information out there. You're not specifically identifying them, but if you had the ability to kind of paper trail or whatever, or even just that bettor happens to be reading about it on social media or whatever, and be like, wait a minute, that's mine. I don't want that out there. You can't risk, the sportsbook's customer is obviously much more key to the business than my ability to report on it.
Right.
That's what's important to them. I have to recognize that, which I certainly do. they need the customer a lot more than they need me. There's certainly a symbiotic relationship there, but they need the customer a lot more than they need me. So if a customer were to read that and be like, wait a minute, who told them I made $1 million bet on the Eagles against the Chiefs? I don't, I know I'm not specifically identified, but they said there's the name of the book and the size of the bet. And that's where I bet it. And that was my wager. Gotta be really diligent with that. And I've got to be really diligent with that and find a way to, like I said, if we want to get it out there, if they're okay with it getting out there, we have to figure out how to massage that message to still get it out there and make it entertaining and informative and enjoyable, but not point directly at somebody potentially.
Right. Trust clearly goes a long way here. And
Yes.
I mean, that's why you're so well respected. You've got so many contacts for decades. It's not easy for people to maintain, because there's got to be I'm sure a temptation sometimes to reveal more information, to be the first to the story or the first to breaking news. Have you seen other people in your industry maybe violate that trust? And what does that look like in the long term?
I've definitely seen it. I think it depends on the person. I think what's unfortunate is I know that, like, I mean, I can think back in my mind of an example with one major national sports book where, 2018, 2019, as PASPA got overturned and sports betting started expanding state by state by state, it was a little bit of Wild West, if you will. We were reporting on big bets like I was reporting, and a couple of others were reporting on big bets like crazy. We were just getting flooded with information. And it was almost too much, but you felt like you needed to kind of keep up. And then one major national book said, listen, if we green light you, you can put it out. But if you get it and you haven't got it green lighted, and it's from our book and you haven't got a green light from us, you need to contact us first, and we will give you a yes or no. And I was like, I didn't really like it, but I understood it. And so I followed that to the letter. And there was a reporter or two that did not. And that was frustrating for me, because I'm seeing them, some of these people are rather well known and got a ton of juice out of it. And I'm like, man, I had that first. I could have put it out there, but I understand that long term, it's about that relationship. And if you do those things enough, you're going to damage that relationship. You're not going to get information that you want when you need it. Yeah, sure. Maybe you've got an end run you can do to occasionally get something that otherwise you would not get, and you can go ahead and continue reporting that way. But long term, if you want to keep that relationship intact, you've got to respect what their boundary is. And then, at the same time, there's some give and take there. They will hopefully respect that you're just trying to inform and entertain your audience. And honestly, at the same time, it does promote their operation. It puts their name out there, and it's not in a negative light necessarily because they took a big bet or something. So there is some give and take there. I don't think it's worth damaging a relationship to get something out there. Now, look, there could be a situation where it's a big enough news story, Dave, that maybe you've got and they say no, and you say, wait a minute, this is a little, might be something a little bit different than a large wager or something.
Right.
And you
like
have
if you saw like Ohtani walking into MGM Sportsbook to make a bet.
Exactly. And you say, listen, there's a news element here that we cannot overlook as much as you'd like us to. Let's talk this through, but this has to be reported on. Thankfully, most of the work I do, as I say to anybody who asks, is I get to do a lot, and you've already alluded to it. I get to do a lot of the fun stuff. I'm talking to people behind the counter, on both sides of the counter, really, on how games are being bet and where money's coming in and where the sharp guys are betting and where the squares like me and you are putting our money, and, what that ends up meaning when games kick off. What's the sportsbook going to need? What's the public going to want? What's it going to take for the public to beat the sports books this week? That sort of thing. But there are some news that you kind of alluded to with the Ohtani thing. There are some things that come up that are legitimate hard news stories about the sports betting space, and there may have to be some give and take there, but you may have to push them a little bit. They may not want it out there, but it's like, look, we can't get around this. This is newsworthy. We have to report on it. We'll be just say, look, I've been fair with you on everything else. I'm going to be fair here. I think that's the thing. And that's all part of relationship building. It takes, as you noted, years and decades, even with some of the sources who I've got. And what you don't want to do, like I said, is torch your sources for the sake of getting clicks. I think that's one thing. I had a feeling that this conversation might go this way at some point.
Yeah.
But look, I think, and I don't want to take this too far off the rails or make it like social or political or whatever. I'm just, in general terms, I'm saying that I don't think journalism as a pillar, as like the fourth estate, if you will, here in the United States, I think the reason it's in the spot it's in right now, which a lot of people think isn't good, we've earned that.
Right.
Journalists have earned that. They've earned that the black mark on their reputation because of the over pursuit of being first, of being willing to burn your sources to be first, being first and finding out you're wrong, and then the retraction gets barely the traction of they say that the truth goes around the world before or a lie goes around the world before the truth gets its pants on. Right. So the retraction or the follow-up is never going to get the response and the clicks and the eyeballs that the original is going to get. So I just try to take I want to be first, there's no doubt about it. I want to kick your ass, for that matter. I want to win that battle all the time. I want to have the best information as quickly as possible, but also as reliably as possible. I want to beat you on stuff. I'm not going to beat you on everything. The way information gets dispensed these days, unless you can literally stay online 24/7, you're not going to win all those battles. And you have to be, too many journalists don't understand that yet, and they should acclimate themselves to that. And maybe their bosses don't understand it either. Maybe their bosses need to understand, look, in this day where information can travel so fast, if you don't have the ability to be online 24/7, which I don't think anybody should be, then you're going to get beat on. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And you need to be satisfied with that. Bosses need to be satisfied with that, rather than, putting yourself in a position to put information out there that may not be accurate, or that maybe you shouldn't have put out there the way you did because you're burning a trusted source who may no longer be a trusted source anymore. And then all of a sudden, was it worth losing a source to win this 2-hour news window or this 6-hour? I don't even think there's a 24-hour news window anymore, Dave. But if there is, okay, so you won the day. What are you going to do tomorrow? So I feel like I haven't done that. I feel like I have, and there may have been something where maybe I got a little ahead of the curve, but if I did, I was, I've built relationships with sources where they know I had no malice or intent. And we may go back, we may delete something, or we may revise something, or what have you. And again, I'm not saying that's fair to them necessarily, because like I said, the truth or the lie goes around the world. The truth isn't even dressed yet. But generally speaking, I value that relationship so much that unless it's really, really big and it has to be reported on, if they say, look, we need to dial this back or not report it at all, and you just need to use that to inform how you report on this, I'm good with that. I think that's what's helped keep me where I'm at for quite a while. I feel like I've carved out a really good niche and a good following that trusts what I have to say. And that's not just the sports books. There are a lot of sharp bettors. My work really is to be entertaining, informative, potentially actionable. You might be able to take action off information I give you. I'm not telling you what to do with it, but it could potentially be. Okay, which is great. If it's actionable, that's fantastic. I would like it to be actionable, but I don't want to tell you what to do with it. What I might think and what you might think and what somebody else might think could be three different things. I might think anything this, you might think, oh, well, that leads me to do this, and somebody else will be that leads me to do the opposite. I want it to be entertaining, informative, and actionable where possible. But I have a lot of sharp who follow me. They don't need my stuff at all. My stuff does not inform what they do at all. It's not how they engage with sports betting. They're on a totally higher plane. So, but they follow me. And I think they do so because they respect the work I do, and they know that I'm honest about it. And they know that in a lot of cases, the sources I use are people who they're putting their money with. So I think that helps too, to have those kinds of sources where the sharp bettors are playing with those people. So I think that speaks to how I cultivate relationships and then how I report on the information I get out of those relationships.
Yeah, I think that's great. There's a lot to unpack there. When you talked about
that was really long. I'm sorry.
No, it was really good. It was really good because you covered a couple different things I wanted to just explore. If you dropped your name at any sports book or probably with sharp bettors in Vegas, people inherently trust you because of what you've built, and you've earned that. What you did talk about those, and you have other people who maybe have violated that trust. It could put a stain on the entire industry as a whole, right? And you started to allude to that from journalism perspective. And if I relate that to some of our listeners, like in the law enforcement space, they have one cop has one negative interaction with the community, and you've got another cop who does a great job. So you kind of are all dealing with that same stain, I guess, on your record, right? On your reputation.
No question. And that's the unfortunate part of it. It that shouldn't obviously that shouldn't necessarily be the case. You know,
Right.
the overwhelming majority of those in law enforcement and in other sectors are doing their job to the best of their ability, trying to be honest about it, do it with integrity, do it with honesty, try to be truthful and not lead anybody where they shouldn't be leading them, and not doing things that are unethical or unorthodox or what have you. But it only takes a small minority to
Right.
make a negative impact.
Well, and I think what I want to talk about kind of what's changed over the last decade, but a good, I think, start to that is to maybe talk about how we met, because it's probably
Sure.
it's been
This is the fun stuff now. Let's go.
oh my goodness. Yeah. I'll let you go through the contest you were at, but just a little bit of context. I went to Vegas. I go every year, with Sean, who, my good friend. And we were there not really knowing much about sports gambling, but we happened to walk into the Mirage, rest in peace, the Mirage.
Yes.
And there we go, meet Patrick. But maybe you can speak a little bit to what that interaction was
So
like.
do you remember, was that 2016 or 2017?
I think 16. I could be wrong.
Okay. So what was going on? I was with Covers at the time, as I think some of the bottom thirds and links and so forth have alluded to. I'm now the senior reporter of Vegas Insider. You see that up over my shoulder. That's my full-time gig. I'm also a contributor for Fox Sports Digital. So a lot of my articles go up at Fox Sports as well. But the company that gave me my full-time start, I'd done a lot of freelance work for them prior to that, while I was still in the newspaper biz, was doing some freelance work for covers.com, if you want to look it up. Great company. And I'm forever grateful that they gave me the opportunity to leave newspapers and go full-time into national sports betting reporter mode. So what we did for a few years there is, the first weekend of the NFL season, we did a big event at the Mirage Sportsbook where we had a whole, you come up, you talk to us, you answer a short survey, and we enter you into a drawing. And with that drawing, you get, was it $1,000? I think it was $1,000.
Yeah, it's
You get
$1,000.
$1,000 bankroll to bet. We're out there all weekend. We're out there like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we're signing people up until like, I don't know, noon or 1 o'clock Sunday. And then Pacific time. So like, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then shortly before the kickoff, about an hour or so before kickoff of the Sunday night game, everybody that's in the drawing, we draw one name. That person gets a $1,000 bankroll to use in whatever manner he or she sees fit on the Sunday night game. You got to bet it all on the Sunday night game, but you can make a whole bunch of different bets. Well, sure as heck, Dave and Sean get drawn. And we did this a lot. We did this during March Madness too for a few years. And Dave and Sean were easily the most animated and best people we ever had win this. I mean, you want to get some social media juice from this, some clicks on your articles for this, video watchers for this kind of thing. So you just hope you get somebody that's really animated. We had one or two who just kind of went along for the ride and, they enjoyed it, but they didn't enjoy it. If you know what I mean. Sean and Dave totally enjoyed it. They immersed themselves in it. They did multiple videos before we even kicked off. We were sending videos out on social media, and they're going bananas, and they're like going over their sheets, trying to figure out all their picks. And the great Jason Logan, my former boss and coworker, covers. He's helping them try to decide, where to spread out their money, mainly to make sure it's $1,000 free bankroll. So we just want you guys to get, even if you only get $500 back, that's $500 you didn't have when the day began. So we're just trying to make sure you get out of there with something, and hopefully you get out of there with a lot. But get out of there with at least a few $100. And Dave and Sean were just over the moon. They were incredible winners and ended up doing great on the game. I think you won something like you got back like $1,600. So you got your 1,000 back, and then you got the whole 1,000 back, plus you won an additional $600, $700, something like that. And I still have the video, I think, of them on my phone, of them counting it all out for you guys. And then we did a cool video where you guys like danced your way out of the casino. It was absolutely out of the sportsbook, I should say. And it was absolutely a total riot. I mean, we couldn't have asked for two better winners to do video of and get comments from. It was a total blast. And, ever since then, as you alluded to, you two come out every year for NFL Week 1. And again, rest in peace, the Mirage. I hope the Hard Rock does it justice. I expect they will. But that place was just, there's nothing I can tell. I know Circa Sports, Circa Las Vegas, unbelievable sports. The place is absolutely gorgeous. The Superbook, I like to call the shrine of sports betting. It's been around forever. It's huge. It's amazing. There are other great sports books up and down Las Vegas Boulevard, and I have a real soft spot for the South Point because I feel like I like to call the South Point the people's book, Dave. It's like the average Joe, and you can get a $1.50 hot dog right next door, and you can eat and drink for cheap. But there was something about the Mirage, the atmosphere in the Mirage on an NFL Sunday, and particularly on like a Super Bowl Sunday or the first few days of March Madness, but certainly the first NFL Sunday of the season, the last NFL Sunday of the season, March Madness and so forth. The atmosphere there is just so incredible. And Dave and Sean they didn't pick that place by accident. They were there every year because the vibe you get there is just unmatched. And they continue to come back year after year to the Mirage, and now the Mirage is now closed. We're gonna have to figure out where they're going this year. I know we're going to swing golf sticks. I know we're going to do that. These two are going to take my money on the golf course. Dave and his buddy Sean. But yeah, that's how it all came to be. And now we meet every year, on that first weekend of the NFL season. We inevitably do like a short video that we throw up on social media real quick. And now last year and again this year, we've added golf to the equation, which is awesome. Dave and Sean are two good people who are great communicators themselves. They understand the kind of the give and take value of social media, how fun it can be when consumed in the spirit that they sports bet in, which is fun and entertaining, and let's hope we win. But you know what? It's not the end of the world if we don't.
Right. Yeah. What a cool experience. Life-changing, honestly. Got a chance to meet you, understand what this whole world looks like in the sports betting arena. And just been a fun and valued friendship we've had ever since. The last couple of things that you just mentioned I want to talk about is how things have changed with social media. Now with, sports gambling now with FanDuel and DraftKings and all these others, it's it's so much more accessible to everybody. And it's the same thing with information, like you talked about, and you mentioned how people want information quick, but all of that, I'm wondering how much falls on the consumer. Because just the other day, I thought the Bills made a huge trade for Micah Parsons because Adam Schefter tweeted it, but it wasn't Adam Schefter. It was, it was the phony Adam Schefter on Twitter. But it can happen so quick. You're getting all this information about an injury or a trade or a bet or whatever. How much of that is on the consumer to go maybe inspect what you're reviewing?
That's a really good question. I think it's not 100% on the consumer, Dave, but think we all have, not just journalists, but we all have a responsibility to understand the age we're in, an obligation to understand the age we're in. We're in the age of this fast-flowing information, and social media also being what social media is. There's parody sites, and a lot of them I love. I love a lot of this stuff. And there's fun sites and entertainment sites and snarky sites. And, I just think that more of it is on the consumer than it used to be. And the consumer needs to understand that. If you see something, a post on, like you said, on the Micah Parsons thing, click the person who posted it. Just take 10 seconds, click the person's bio who posted it, bring up their page, and it'll say, Adam Schefter or whatever it says, parody or whatever. Just take a minute before you go off the deep end. And we have a responsibility as journalists too. I saw something, I don't know what it was. It was a couple of weeks ago, but it was along those same lines. It was somebody being snarky, but it looked like it was from an official account, and it was a parody account of an official account. And it might have even been the Schefter one again. It was something where I was like, oh my gosh. And now I'm thinking, okay, I got to look up Super Bowl odds or whatever. And did this impact the futures? Did anything move? Did anybody learn about this and ahead of time and get a bet down at a much better number because they somehow had a little inside information or whatever, or just happened to beat the number and bet at the right time? But I did a couple clicks and I was like, oh, okay, I see. This was whatever it was. This didn't actually happen. This was somebody being snarky or parodic on social media. So I think it's a little unfortunate, but there's so much benefit, I think, overall from the wide and free flow of information that you have to, with it, take some of the pitfalls. And with that, you just take 10 seconds, take a minute, make sure you're seeing what you think you're seeing. I do think the consumer has more of an obligation than they've ever had, but if you're going to enjoy the free flow of information and appreciate 90% of what it gives you, and maybe it's less, but I think it's a lot, then with it, you've got to accept, hey, I've got to do a little due diligence here. If I see something that seems too good to be true or really huge, how could that possibly be? Just a couple clicks, a quick Google search, something to support what you're seeing before you go off half-cocked.
How do you, so in that, because the water's so muddy now with that, everybody's an expert, especially go on Twitter and you get on NFL Sunday, you're going to get a million different tips and pro tips on who to bet for, whatever. How do you, as an actual expert with actual sources, differentiate yourself from the 4,000 other just people that are out there trying to give advice that day?
Right. Well, first off, I'm only an expert in that I have a lot of sources. I don't consider myself an expert bettor. I'm not a sharp bettor. I bet for fun. I have a good time with it. Occasionally, I might get some really good information that will help inform my bet in the way that some of the information I put out might do that. But I'm not sharp at anything. I have really good sources. So if it's something that I feel like one of my sources can answer on either side of the counter, a lot of times I'll go to I'll see something that I think is interesting, but maybe a little bit off. And I'll go to somebody like Captain Jack Andrews, who is a respected, he's the co-founder of Unabated, which is a sports betting related website. He and his partner in that, Rufus Peabody, who is a widely renowned bettor, and so is Captain Jack for that matter, but Rufus perhaps a little more so. I might shoot him a message. Hey, did you see this? What is this? And he might, it's XYZ. It's not ABC or whatever, or a source behind the counter. But, often I'll do what I just encouraged others to do. Click on a bio of somebody who put that information out. Go to Google and see if you can get two or three different reliable sources, reputable sources where and if you're not seeing that, then you're like, okay, wait a minute. We need to let off the throttle a little bit here. I mean, we all kind of went through this, Dave, when the Lakers got Luka Doncic. It was like, are you, what? There's no way that happened. There's no way that happened. The Lakers did not just trade for Luka Doncic. I don't care what Sham says. This did not happen. And I think for a few minutes, everybody was like, no way. But, Shams is an extremely reputable source. Really, really reputable. And people were like, man, Sham's X feed, Twitter feed got hacked. They put out that Doncic got traded to the Lakers. And, for a minute, it's like, yeah, that's a really amazing trade. I could see where the skepticism meter would be at 12 on a scale of 1 to 10. But give it a few minutes, and then you can tell that Shams very much had control of his feed. You Google and, or even just search the name on X or others, whatever your preferred social media is, you start seeing other very reliable sources. Yes, this is as amazing as it sounds. This is happening. So I would just say with journalists and with the overall content consuming public, give something a little time to marinate. And when this day and age, it doesn't take too long for something to marinate to where you can really root out what the truth is.
And then so just a couple last pieces on that, and then I'll let you go. I know you got a busy week ahead of you, but the way that you're putting content out, I know you've learned how to maybe change that because the audience is always changing on how they want to receive content. So I know you got the long form articles, you got what you post on X, then your videos have kind of changed over the years. So how do you stay on top of what's the right way to distribute content?
And I'm still trying to figure that out, but What I've learned, what I've been doing for years with video is on a college football Saturday, an NFL Sunday, as you've got like a slate of games. Let's go NFL again. We might as well keep this as NFL centric as possible because that's what's coming up here. On an NFL Sunday, like noon Eastern, 9 o'clock here in Las Vegas, 9 o'clock Pacific, I'd be in a sports book and I would put out a video that's like, at the time, X/Twitter basically could handle 2 minutes, 20 seconds. Anything over 2 minutes, 20 seconds, it wouldn't load. So you have to jam as much info as you can into 2 minutes, 20 seconds. And what I was doing was like taking, 3, 4, maybe even 5 games that had interesting movement and big bets and maybe sharp action and trying to jam all of them into this 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And it was really challenging. And I think, there was a segment of my followers, people of content consumers, who really liked that I'd hit like 4 or 5 games. Loved it. But it was a very small segment. And so I tried to carve it back to like two or three games, because I could tell by, looking at analytics, how many people were watching 10 seconds, watching 30 seconds, watching 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And the fall off was ridiculous. And I thought, it could be that long, but we need to focus more with maybe 2 games or 3 games. And I think that kind of worked for a little bit. But as I kept looking at the analytics heading into last football season, I was like, this is just, there's 10% of people are watching the whole video. And for the amount of work it takes to do that, the payoff was not there. So last football season, I started what I call my football in 45. It's going to be 45 seconds. It's going to be one game. We're going to hit it all, and we're going to get in, and we're going to get out, and you don't need to have a real long attention. I mean, it does suck that people don't have an attention span, Dave. It just sucks. You can't get around. There are some long-form videos they'll consume, but they don't necessarily want to consume a long-form video on game day, at least for what I'm doing. So I did these football in 45, and they definitely did significantly better. But still, you might, if you were maybe getting 15 to 20% through that 45 seconds, that's pretty good. It's a lot better than only getting 6% through 2 minutes and 20 seconds, especially for all the work it takes to do a 2 minute and 20-second video. And I also knocked out B-roll, because B-roll takes me a long time to insert, and that adds to the workload, and it takes longer for me to get the stuff out. And then the content, when you're going up to kickoff, timeliness is everything. So now this year, what I'm going to try to do, because I still wasn't totally happy with that, it was better, Dave. It's a refining process. You keep going back to it. Now that X has the ability to basically do live, you just hit live and you go live. And I think you and Sean have done these from probably outside Bill Stadium. Forgive me, I'm forgetting the name of the Bill Stadium. I'm not.
Highmark Stadium.
Highmark Stadium. You guys have done these live videos, and there's snow all over the place, and you guys got a cigar and a beer in your hand, and it's like, man, I wish I was there, honestly. I grew up in Denver, or Colorado Springs, but been to Bronco games many times when it's cold and snowy, and it's as much as I hate the snow and cold, there's nothing like being in that atmosphere for a football game. So I want to join you guys.
When you're winning is much better.
Yes, absolutely. So I would love to join you and Sean for a game sometime. I want to be outside the stadium, having a cigar, drinking a beer, or whatever. But this year, what I think I'm going to do, now that it's a little bit, it's gotten easier and easier to do it live. And what I think I figured out is the algorithm setup prefers live. Even if I record something and do it in 45 seconds and immediately hit post, I still think from what I'm seeing, videos are doing better if I just do them. If they're literally posting, I'm literally live. While you're scrolling, there I am. I'm live. I'm talking to you right now. What I'm seeing is, and I've done some longer form, like 5, 8, 10-minute videos over the last 6 to 8 months, ever since last Super Bowl on this, where I'm doing some interviews or just talking myself and so forth. And they just, for whatever reason, the way social media algorithms have evolved, the live videos seem to be the thing. So now I'm going to try to keep it still 45, 50 seconds, something like that. But we're going to do it live and see if that helps too. So yeah, there's been a constant evolution. I'm doing less. I'm doing, less games, a little, more focused information on the one game that means the most, perhaps. And maybe I'll throw in just a quick snippet on a second game if there's something really good. Just, by the way, they're going to need this too. Like one sentence, but also recognizing that the way that not only people want to consume it, but the way that the platform best elevates the content that you're doing. You've got to be cognizant of that. And I think live is the thing. So we're going to see how it goes live this season. It's going to be, I mean, if I make a mistake, that's how it goes. Sorry, I made a mistake. It's live. We'll try to correct it right there. If I hopefully I catch it and be like, oh, wait a minute, that's not what I meant. I meant this. But we're live, and these are the perils of live, but the pluses of live, I think, outweigh the negatives based on, what I'm learning in this ever-evolving content space in a niche that really is sports betting. A lot of people think, oh, it's been 7 years since PASPA got overturned. It's, we've got it in 38 states or jurisdictions across the country and what have you. But still, this is a very nascent industry in the United States. So there's still a lot of evolving and a lot of growing and a lot of ways this is going to go in the future. And you got to be willing to, they say evolve or die. I feel like I still do a lot of the same content. I'm just finding different and more interesting ways to do it. I still do some stuff in the more traditional way. Those big long form odds reports are still a more traditional form of reporting, but I've got these videos and a lot of social media where I can break it down into really easily digestible bits. And if you want a lot more, here's where you can go to get it.
I think there's so much to take away from that for people in any, like even just the regular business world, is think about all the information we talked about in the last hour, how much all the work that goes into talking to sources and collecting data and looking at analytics and trends, and then trying to put that communication out maybe in a 45-second package, because the way that somebody wants to receive it is different than all the work that went into it. And I think that's an important takeaway. And then how much that you look at the analytics to evolve the way that you've provided content. I think that's really important. There's a lot of people that just stick with doing things the way they've always done it, and then they're going to fade away and their message isn't going to be heard anymore. So I think that's some really good takeaways. I've got one last question for you.
Sure.
And then I want to make sure we get people a way to connect with you. But I know one of the things that you do when you're out there floating around Vegas, and we'll see you there shortly, is you're the Sportsbook, and you're also talking to the average Joe or Jill who's at the Sportsbook making their first bet ever. What are some of the maybe either myths or like some of the maybe dummies guide to sports betting that the entry level sports bettor, some questions that you might feel or that you want to address? And I should say, as you're thinking of that answer, gamble responsibly and know your limit, stay within it. We'll just put that out there for the episode just in case. But what are some of those things that maybe you hear from the entry level sports bettor that you wish you could inform everybody on?
Well, and to your point, I often write, and I think Kurt Warner stole this from me, by the way, and he really ought to give me credit because I was writing it before he was saying it as in his role as a high profile analyst for football. But never bet more than you can afford to lose. Okay. Never bet more than you can afford to lose. If you're really serious about this and you're professional, you have a much better understanding of bankroll management and all those things. But if you're me and you, look, we're just having fun. We know what our budget is. You should make sure you know what your budget is so that you're not like, okay, I've got to cut back on groceries this week because I got carried out on a stretcher from the NFL last weekend. Don't let that happen to you. But the one thing I would advise, look, a lot of the public betting masses, as I like to call them, they're not all about, but they're a lot about betting a little to win a lot. And I totally get it. So the only way you can bet a little to win a lot on an NFL Sunday is if you're betting parlays. Okay. So look, there's a saying, and it may be a little cliche in the sports book industry, but it won't be cliche to most of your audience. But the reason things are cliche is because they're usually true. They get to be cliche because they're accurate. Basically, it's along the lines of sports books want you to bet parlays. There's odds makers love nothing more than people betting parlays, because as soon as you stack a second game onto that first, and even more so third, fourth, fifth, your odds get incrementally shorter of cashing that ticket. So that's how during football season, especially, that's a sportsbook's bread and butter. They love parlay players. Now, I'm not saying not to play parlays, but I'm saying, as you noted, be responsible about it. Be reasonable. Okay. Understand that if you do a five-leg NFL parlay, go into it thinking, I'm going to have fun. Hopefully I can get this to the third or fourth leg and we get a really good sweat. Maybe I get lucky and win, but I'm probably going to lose. go into it that way. If you have a hard time having that attitude, then don't bet parlays. If there's 5 games you like and you want to, then just spread out your action over those, spread out your bankroll, your budget over those 5 games. Make straight bets on them, or maybe make a couple of 2-team parlays instead of needing 5 different outcomes to happen on an NFL Sunday. And we know how volatile the NFL can be, no matter who's favored by how many points. Stuff happens. I think it was Giants Colts last season going into like the second to last week, maybe. And or maybe it was the last week. I don't remember. But a bunch of people in Survivor contest still had the Colts, and the Colts were at home, and the Colts potentially could have made the playoffs. And the Giants were dreadful. And the Giants went to Indianapolis and won that game. Okay. That's the kind of stuff that kills your 5-team parlay. And it happens all the time in the NFL. So maybe think about a 2-teamer, or maybe think about making 5 straight bets. And I know that the win back at the end isn't nearly as much, but if you're walking out of there with more than you walked in there with, you should be grateful. Get yourself a drink and a dinner or whatever, and live to fight again next week. So to me, I just say, to the degree you can, stay away from the parlays, or at least make sure you understand what you're getting into, and maybe don't stretch them out into 3, 4, 5, 6. You're doing a 10-team money line parlay on an NFL Sunday. God bless you if you get there, and I'll write about it if you do, because those kind of things are really fun to write about, while advising that this is not the norm. You're not going to hit the lottery ticket parlay very often, but every now and then a lottery ticket will hit. 99.99% of the time, it will not. So just make sure you understand that going in, and treat your bankroll and your expectations accordingly.
That $5 parlay ticket that pays $7,462.16 isn't worth much, but it's exciting for the moment. I'll tell you
and
that.
You can do that. I mean, especially if it's $5. I mean, it's a lottery ticket. Treat it that way, and you'll be much healthier. And look, if you get 4 and the last one has to come in, you get a great sweat, and there's entertainment value in that. Like watching a movie get to its high point, there's just this sweat. It's, Mission Impossible or whatever, and he's hanging off a helicopter. You get this juice from it. You might not win in the end, but you got all this juice, and you had a really fun Sunday, and your parlay lasted all day, but you lost $5. Big deal. Okay. Treat it like that.
Right. What, because you got so much content to share, I'm going to make sure in the show notes, if you're listening, you can go back wherever you're listening, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and we'll list Patrick's Twitter handle and also a link to Vegas Insider and Fox Sports. But anywhere else you recommend people go to learn more about you and your work?
Well, I mean, I probably should do more social media platforms than I do, but I pretty much live on X. And I know you've got it in there, but it's just to remind, it's at Patrick E_Vegas. And you'll find a lot of my work. I do a lot of snippets that go on social media. Sometimes I do, as I noted, some longer form videos that I think are fun to engage with. And I'll link to a lot of my longer form content from X as well. So you can find all my stuff there. Plus, look, I think part of doing this, Dave, we didn't get to this, but we're going to now, if you don't mind. I think part of maintaining your following and keeping good relationships with your sources and so forth is revealing more about yourself than just, I'm the reporter and I'm going to spit you all this information all the time. I'm an 80s new wave guy till death do us part. I'm constantly posting stuff about, the Smiths and New Order and stuff like that. I like all the movies. I'm a huge John Hughes movie fan, whether Ferris Bueller, Pretty in Pink. I like a lot of the older funny stuff, the Caddyshack, the Blazing Saddles. I think Super 70s Sports is like one of the best follows on X. If you're not following Super 70s Sports and you're 40 or older, you need to be following Super 70s Sports. It's an amazing follow. But reveal more about just the sports betting about yourself. Dive into other things. Make comments on, look, you may not want to get political or anything, and I totally understand that, but have some fun with and reveal things about yourself on social that help people engage with, see that you're more than just this one thing. I think that helps. I think that helps a great deal with how my engagement goes with the things that I really want people to engage on. If I just engage in little things here and there that are totally off the wall, a movie, a TV show, a series I'm binging, whatever, it just makes you more relatable to the everyday person who's doing all those things too, while they're maybe dabbling in sports betting.
You know, that when you were talking about how much people should know about you other than maybe what your role is, same thing for investigators. Like they're in a conversation with somebody and sometimes we're so focused on the issue, the question we want to ask, that people forget that you're a human sitting across from another human. So be a person first and you'll get so much more information out. You'll build trust so much easier that way.
Oh, I think that's a great point. I feel like that's how I've been able to get a lot of the relationships I've built, is that I'm not seen as just this churner of information. I just try to be relatable and let people know, hey, I do a lot of the same things you do. I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on with the bear. Is Carmi going to lose his... I know I'm behind. I know this series has been out for a while on Hulu, but my wife and I are just totally engrossed with this series. I can't believe Carmi and Claire might be on the outs. I hate it. You know, I'm hoping...
Have you watched Love is Blind yet?
No, I've not watched that yet. But,
all right. We'll save that for the next time we chat.
Absolutely. But yeah, be relatable that way. It helps, like you said, it makes people realize, hey, this guy does some stuff that I do. This is kind of cool. This is different. Let's engage here. But you're only going to engage a little bit of your audience. You're not going to get a bunch of clicks, but plenty of people will see it, and it helps make that human relationship, that human contact a little better, which is always important if you're trying to communicate, no matter, as you said, no matter what way you're trying to communicate with, no matter what profession you're in, how you're trying to have dialogue, being human, being relatable, being funny, be self-deprecating. It helps a lot, no question.
Yeah. Well, I know you got a lot going on, so I'm going to let you get back to your crazy week 1 preparation. We're already in college football already, so I know you got a lot, but we'll link all your links in the show notes. We appreciate your time. If you guys already forgot, Patrick may have advocated for a Bills bet, for the futures bet for the Super Bowl, Broncos to win the division, and maybe the 49ers sneak in. I heard all of those things.
There you go.
But
there you go.
Bet at your own risk. But
your mileage
so much,
may vary.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate your time, and thank you all for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told.
To help more listeners find our show, please provide us a rating, give us a follow, and share this episode with your colleagues. For the latest news and to engage with our guests, follow Truth Be Told on your favorite social media apps, and don't forget, we are available on all major platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and watch a video of this episode on YouTube. On behalf of our guests and valued sponsors, thanks again for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told.